Hello everyone, my name is Prasanjit and today I'm going to talk about how SSL works. So this will clear our concepts about SSL, encryption, handshaking and all that. So that'll level you up for your interview questions or just to know how this technology works. So what is SSL? It's short for Secure Socket Layer. So Secure Sockets Layer is a protocol for encrypting and securing communications that take place in the internet. Now, in the current days, SSL has been replaced by another technology called TLS or Transport Layer Security. So that is a new protocol, but we still stick to using the same name SSL for this terminology. So how does SSL work? Very quickly, there are a few principles that you must grasp to understand how SSL works. One is it starts with the TLS handshake, in which the two communicating parties open a secure connection and exchange the public key. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then during the TLS handshake, the two parties generate session keys, and the session keys are used to encrypt and decrypt communications happening over the TLS. And different session keys are used to encrypt communications in each new session. And TLS ensures that the party on the server side or the website is actually the same person they intend to talk to, and TLS also ensures that the data that was sent out was not altered or tinkered with in between transit, like in transit. So that is it about TLS. Now we'll go deep into how SSL TLS handshaking works, but before that let me quickly tell you what are the use cases of SSL. Now SSL can be used to secure traffic on your website. So website providers, they use something called a SSL certificate to encrypt the data between the browsers and the servers. So the browser is the client which requests data from a website. So whatever communication packets are transmitted between these websites are all encrypted. Now this another use case for this, that is sending encrypted emails. So it's the same, whenever data is transmitted, it is encrypted. Now how does this work? So if you look at this diagram, the client messages the server to initiate a connection. So SSL handshaking starts with a TCP request. So that reaches the server, and the server sends back an encrypted public key. That is very important. Here a public key encryption happens. So server sends back an encrypted public key or a certificate, and the client checks the certificate, verifies that that is the intended person, and creates an encrypted key back to the server. Now the server decrypts that key and delivers encrypted content with the key to the client, and the client then decrypts the content, completing the handshake. And once this is done, a session is established, and then the data is transmitted between these client and the server until this session is alive. Now in the TLS handshake, as I said, it starts with a TCP request, most probably from the client side towards the server side. And what is the technology behind it? That is called a public key cryptography, because as I said, public keys are used in the SSL encryption. So in public key cryptography, the public key which is the server makes available publicly, and there is a private key which the server keeps as a secret and only uses on the server side, that is not shared. And the data encrypted with the public key can be decrypted only with the public only with the private key. And during the TLS handshake, the client and the server use the public and the private key to exchange randomly generated data, and this random data is used to create new keys for encryption, which are called session keys. Now once the session keys are available, there is no longer the requirement to decrypt data using the public private key pair. So here there is another concept if you want to go deep, that is called symmetric encryption with session keys. Like for example, when the initial SSL handshake works, it happens with an asymmetric encryption, because you need a public key, and then later on you need a private key on the server side to decrypt the messages sent from the client. So that is asymmetric because two different types of keys are involved. But in case of the session keys, they use symmetric encryption, where a single type of a key is being used by both ends. So you might be thinking, what is a SSL certificate? You might have seen all the websites use SSL certificates to encrypt their communications. So SSL certificate is nothing but a file that is installed on the origin server, and it contains the public key and the identity of the website owner along with different other information. And this is the file that allows the website to encrypt the data that they send out. So the websites create or purchase their SSL certificates, and the creation process also involves a few things, like they have to create something called a certificate request or CSR and send it across to a certification authority, and the authority issues a SSL certificate which they install on their web server like Apache or Nginx or Tomcat or any other web server. Now once that is done, the server is ready to accept SSL or TLS handshake connections, and that is how it works. And you might be knowing, when to access a SSL based website, you have to use a protocol called HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, secure, which is different from HTTP in the way that it encrypts the data that goes through. So very quickly, how many types of SSL certificates are there? In fact, there are three kinds of SSL certificates. One are called domain validation certificates, organization validation certificates, and extended validation certificates. So how are they different? Let me tell you. So domain validation certificates are where the website offers you a padlock symbol, which you can see here, which symbolizes that this domain is validated, but the organization details are not shown anywhere, which means you cannot be sure whether the domain who is the owner of the domain. So that information is not available. Now there is another called OV certificates, or organization validation certificates, where in addition to domain ownership, the organization is validated and the certificates can be viewed on most major web browsers. The third kind is called extended validation certificates, which are used by most online users because they come with comprehensive verification checking and other, which involves domain verification and other cross checks, and also verifies the physical location of that particular business organization. So these are just the SSL certificate types that different websites employ. So very quickly, let me recap this, how SSL works. If someone asks you that, the answer would be SSL works using public key cryptography, and there is a process in which TLS handshaking works, and in that process the client initiates a request to start a TLS communication, and the server sends back its public key. The client checks that public key or the certificate, whatever is the case, and creates another key which is encrypted and sends it back to the server. Now server can decrypt this key using its private key, and once that is done, then it sends it back to the client to complete the handshake. It acknowledges back to the client, and once the handshaking is complete, a session key is generated, and both of the client and the server use this session key for back and forth communication as long as this session is active. This communication is completely encrypted, so man in the middle cannot decrypt the content of the packets that is being sent. So that is about how SSL works. See you around with another topic in the next session. Thanks a lot.